So, you ever wondered what it takes to get the old wipers working? Old vacuum wipers, replace them with a electric motor. I'm going to show you how to do that. Hello, today on Brian's Budget Garage, we're going to talk about replacing a vacuum actuated wiper motor with an electric one in a 1950 Pontiac. I could try to fix a vacuum actuated one, but from what I've seen, they're not really efficient, and I want something that works every time. So we're going to go ahead and replace it. So here's the Pontiac. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually remove the battery cable. When you work on this, it's going to be under the dash, and there's wires, and just best to go ahead and remove the battery cable. So this is already loose. I already loosened it. Just go ahead and pull it off. The next thing is to explain how the vacuum actuated wiper motor works. So inside the engine, on this version, it actually doesn't get the vacuum from the carburetor or the intake. So there is this pipe right here. You can see this pipe right there. That goes to the intake manifold. That pipe in older cars will run the vacuum actuator itself for the wipers. In this car, it actually goes over to this fuel pump slash vacuum pump down here. See if I can get there. That's better. So if you notice, it goes down into that fuel pump slash vacuum pump. So that vacuum pump gives extra vacuum into this line, which you can't really see it because it goes underneath everything, but it comes out right here and goes into the firewall. Okay, that's actually what goes to the wiper motor. So the wiper motor actually doesn't run off of vacuum from the motor, it runs off a vacuum pump. Well, this vacuum pump is dead. Still works as a fuel pump, but the vacuum pump part does not vacuum anything. So I could rebuild that. But even if it was rebuilt, it really never worked very good from the videos I've seen. So the easiest way to deal with this is just replace it with an electric motor. There are companies that actually make replacement parts for these motors, although not for this car. So I'm going to have to modify something that's already out there. Okay, so how the vacuum one used to work, it was mounted up in the dash, and it was always got a vacuum. It had a big strong vacuum. You controlled the speed by this little valve here, which went to a cable, which opened a valve to that actuator, which then moved the wipers. I can move the wiper right now because it's down, so that's what actually moved it. So right now I have one of the actuators just hanging down there, because that's the part that hooks to the motor. So the problem is everything is way up under the dash here, which I'll show you in a minute. But to get to it and to get everything out of the way, I had to pull the radio. Now this radio is not like what nowadays radio is. This radio goes from here all the way up around here. This is actually the speaker, or this was the speaker for the radio. So it was a big mechanism that was basically in the way and hadn't worked for 20 years. I might replace it with a vintage radio eventually. So I took that out, which made this massive cavity that I can now work with, because the actuator was right under here, basically, and the radio was in the way. So I've actually taken that radio out, I've taken the old ashtray out for now, and I've taken the glove compartment out. So I mean, I've got a massive cave back here right now to work with. Alright, this is the vacuum actuator. It worked by pushing or sucking a vacuum right in through this port here. Then that cable that went to the top of the dash is right there. That's actually the valve that would allow vacuum into the actuator, that would then basically make this thing basically moves like this, back and forth. Alright, here's the original radio. Somebody actually hooked 12 volts to a 6-volt radio, so it pretty much burned it all up internally. See the big speaker, and you can sort of see the size of this thing. Here, just to get a look of how big it is. I mean, that's sort of my fingers, so it's a monster. It also weighs a ton. So that's, to take that out, it's actually not too hard. You've got a screw here, or a nut here, and a nut here, and then on the side, on the driver's side, you have another mount, which is right down there. Okay, and so you have 3 basic mounts, and then the whole thing comes out, slides out. We're looking at underneath the dash. This is where the cable came from for on top that sped up and slowed down the wipers. The actual wiper motor was actually mounted right here, or vacuum actuator, I think is what they call them, right here and right there. So that actuator is sitting right here, and the little arm pivots like that. So basically what I'm going to have to do is move things a little bit to the side, so it's going to sit more like this, and the electric motor is going to go in like right here. That's why the radio had to move, because the radio came back to about here and it would not allow this. And honestly, wipers are more important than a broken radio to me. So basically I'm going to have to make some tabs that will convert this and this, bend it flat, and then the motor, which I'll show you in a minute, will then sit right here. Okay, here's the new motor and the old motor together. It comes from LMC truck. It's actually for a GMC truck, 1950 GMC truck. I could not find one for a 50 Pontiac. Alright, so it comes with a switch. It's all ready to plug in. In fact, it's just about the right length. And I'll plug it into my power panel. It's 2-speed. Works pretty nice. So all you got to do is hook power to that thing and ground this thing, and poof, you got windshield wipers. Now, the issue that I have is, if you notice, the shape of this arm is different than the shape of this arm. So I'm actually going to I've taken this off, and I'm going to cut the single weld. So I'm going to have to modify it. I'm going to have to cut that single weld and then basically remake this arm to be this long and this shape, and then hook it onto this wiper motor so that it hooks, so that it acts exactly in the same manner as this one and the angles of this one. So that's one thing I'm going to do. This motor here is actually mounted more like this, but this motor is going to be flat. So I have to make tabs that will match this screw to where this hole is, and another tab that matches this screw where that hole is, and then I'm gonna have to make another tab for this screw, because this motor is pretty heavy. Here, let's show the underside. So it's got a lot of bulk to it, and I need to mount this too to the front of the dash somewhere. So I'm gonna have to somehow figure that out. So it's gonna basically be hanging on 3 tabs to each one of these nuts. So basically this is where this is going to mount. So I have to put a tab to each one of those things. Hopefully you can see that. And you can't really see it on the bottom, but then I'm going to have to put a tab. I'm probably take that cable out, actually, and make a tab for that cable. Now we're going to go ahead and make 3 tabs so that we can hook the current bolts to the angle of the mounts underneath the dash. They don't have to be perfect. All you got to do is take the slag off. They're going to be under the dash anyway. What we're going to do, if you notice, the screws on this right here are thinner than the holes on this. If you can look, the holes on the actuator are wider than the screws on the plate. So my tabs have to reach, I have to make sure the inner hole here and the outer hole here match or fit. So that's what I'm going to measure now for drill. Okay, I'm going to put in a 732 bit. That's big enough for a 1/4 inch bolt, which holds this all together to fit through. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 732 bit in. Right. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean up the holes real quick just with my grinder. We've got a little slag on the back end of it. Alright, we're not going to bend the tabs right now because I want to make sure to bend them the correct way. I'll bend them over there. I got pliers. But basically this is how this is going to work. So this tab will fit here, and this tab will fit here, and they'll bend to the appropriate angle, but if you notice they will actually line up with these holes if they need to. So now I got to work on the arm, look like that arm. Okay, the first thing you want to do before you do anything on this thing take off this retainer, take off these plastic pieces, because if you start grinding on this, you're going to melt them and then you're screwed up the whole, you're screwed up where the actual wipers go. So let's see if we can take these plastic pieces off. They're pretty tight. I have to get my knife out. I was hoping they'd just pop right off. Okay, there you go. There's one. Because the last thing you want to do is melt these plastic pieces. They are the bushings for your wipers. You don't want to mess with that. There you go. Now we have just a metal piece which we can cut and weld to do what we need to make this bar. So I'm going to go ahead and grind this weld done. Realize it's going to void the warranty. But since the thing doesn't work, voiding warranty doesn't bother me. I've already checked the motor, it works fine, so I'm just going to go ahead and grind that off. Alright, so now I have two pieces here. The metal ring, which I will cut a new arm that's the shape of the old arm out to weld to it, and I have my two mount pieces which will then be welded to that arm in the right spot. So it'll be a little taller, but it should work fine. Alright, what I'm doing is creating a plate that will be the exact same shape as the original right here, and it's gonna have the holes in the same spot, right? And it will have the exact same, I don't know about outward shape, but the same pattern. And that is what I will actually be welding onto that other bracket. Okay, I wanted to show you what it'll look like after I weld it. So that actually is recreating the original arm there. Alright, I'm showing you basically how I'm aligning this thing. So you want that circle, that X, right in the very center of your circle before you weld it. Okay, here's the final product of that bar, of that arm. So it's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen. Had some problems with the welder, but it is the same shape. Alright, so it's moving. That's all the way twisted this way to prove that it's the right angle. Okay, to prove the right angle right there. And then twist this all the way the other way. Okay, and then that's the right angle that way. So that's the exact right angles and amount of rotation. So that should be set now. Alright, now I've actually put on the plastic things in the retainer. So it's all ready to actually install into the car now. Alright, what I'm going to do is take these mounts now, and I've made lines, you can sort of see it, on how to bend them out. So these basically need about a 30-degree bend on them. So there, you can see that better now. That's the angle I wanted. Trying to show you how I'm isolating the motor from the chassis. I've put 2 rubber washers in there, so I've got a nut. I've got a nut right here. Then I got 2 rubber washers, and then I have the mount, and then the screw, of course. These rubber washers are from the type of rubber washers you use when you're putting on metal siding. Okay, but they seem to work really well for isolating the motor from the chassis. So they isolate pretty well, and they're pretty tight, so that's just what I needed. Then they have lock washers on the back, or lock nuts on the back, so they won't ever loosen up. Alright, I've got the thing mostly in now. I just need to tighten it up. I need to tighten that screw, and I need to tighten that screw, and of course that screw. That one's going to be the hardest one. That screw actually there. So you can see how it's mounted to the original mounts, but it went through these tabs. And then of course that screw is actually going through where the old cable went. The bottom one actually is what you're looking at. So I need to tighten those. It's not that easy because I wanted to use lock nuts, and the problem with lock nuts is that they don't turn easy. So again, so those 2 screws and that one at the bottom there, not this top one, the bottom one. Alright, what I've got going here is a vice grip on the top and a ratchet wrench on the bottom. I'm not worried about ruining the top of that screw because I'm going to actually be cutting it off and putting a knob on there anyway to make it look nice. So this is what it looks like now, a little tall, so I'm going to take my Dremel and cut off the top. Alright, here's what I end up with. Looks close to what the original was. So I take this little cutoff piece, take that away, throw it away, and take this away, and throw it away too. So now this is basically what it looks like. Looks pretty nice actually. It's now chrome compared to plastic. But that's the back mount for the motor. Okay, we had an issue. When I tried to actually hook the arms up to the motor, we ended up breaking something. So I'll show you what I got now. I don't know if you can see that, but it basically pulled out of the wiper mechanism. Because I had to remount this separately, I'm basically going to have to take this bar and bend it to the right shape. It's a different angle. So Not a big deal. I just need more hardware. Do some more drilling, get some more hardware. So here's our motor moving, doing its little thing that it needs to. And it's a self-stopping. It stops at the same spot every time, which is nice. Turn off fast. And it always stops at the right spot. So the problem I'm having, right there's my problem. It broke out of that connector there. That's the one that actually moves the arm. So I've got to get some hardware to fix that connection, and then bend the rod, because this motor is actually at a different angle, and probably the same thing. The other one I tried to bend, I'm not sure if it worked. Here's the other one right here. So it doesn't quite fit. It's close. This one might actually be okay, but I'm gonna have to get some hardware for this side. All right, I think I have it fixed. I'll show you what I'm done, but then I'll show you at the end whether it worked. So I basically replaced what I needed to with washers and screws. So this is what I've come up with. I took the original piece right there, the little one right there, and I put other washers around it, put some grease around it, drilled it out. So it should be the right size, and then with that lock nut, it shouldn't come off. So I won't get it massively tight, just snug enough to work. So. Well, finally got it finished. I'll show you how it works. Everything finally is working. It needs a little bit of adjustment. It's hitting the edge. But first time the wipers have worked probably in 20, 30 years. So here is the motor working like it should. And wiper mechanism right here. And the motor doesn't seem to be moving, which is nice. It's pretty well mounted. A little bit clicky, but again, there's some adjustments that need to be worked on. So that's how you replace a vacuum motor with an electric wiper motor. Hope that helps you guys. Thanks for watching.